everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. Today we're looking back at the hot comics from June 12th, 2020, and I'm recording this on December 11th, 2020. Yesterday we had a whole bunch of news, so I didn't actually look up prices till today. Didn't really affect any of the books on this list though, so with all of Marvel's, Star Wars, and announcements. So all the Marvel and Star Wars announcements didn't really affect any of these, one of which is a bit of a surprise, but most of them not so much. So, as always, we're looking back at the Comic Tom and Key Collector Hottest Comics of the Week and the CBSI Hot Top 10. So those two lists are the ones we look at to see how those books are doing now, what factors made them hot, if a little patience would have paid off for us. This week we got 18 books. So between the two lists, so let's dig into this list. We only have a couple of option-related type stuff. First up, we have Snowblind #1, and basically news came out that there was ongoing bidding for getting the option rights to this. Caused this book to jump up to $30, and yeah, now it's a $5 to $15 book. 9.8 goes for $70 to $110. So this one's back down a little bit. This is very typical. There's option-related news, but it takes a long time for something to go from that to production to actually being released. So a lot of steps along the way. So yeah, this is our typical avoid the news factor, write it down, come back later. Next, we have Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure #1, and this hit the list because the trailer for the third Bill and Ted movie dropped. Caused this book to jump up to around $20. Now it's a $5 to $15 book. That movie's come and gone, or been released. And yeah, not sure there's much future in this franchise. If you have nostalgia for Bill and Ted, then great comic, but yeah, not something necessarily to invest in. Next, we're going to move into a little bit of gaming related books, and this is The Last of Us #1, and this hit the list because the trailer for the second game dropped. And yeah, back then raw copies were going for $110. There's only been 2 raw copy sales in November and here early December, and those both were around $20. Before that though, raws were still pushing $70, $80. 9.6, which seems to be the best grade that's sold at least in the last 3 months. They're all right around $200. So still good value here, still a popular book, popular series, but yeah, it's definitely down from the peak of when that second game was getting ready to come out. Next up, we're going to move into covers. And first up in the covers, we have Strange Academy #1, the Peach Momoko Virgin variant. Now, there's also a trade dress version of this. We're talking about the Virgin mostly here. Raw copies for the Virgin we're going for a little over $100. 9.8s we're going for 150 plus. Now, for the Virgin variant, you're looking at $250 to $300 for a raw copy. 9.8s are going for $400 to $500. That non-raw Virgin variant, the one with the trade dress, will run you around $100 to $150, with a 9.8 running at $200. So a popular series, popular cover. So this one is up, and a little bit of straight cash on this one for sure so far. People love Momoko, and they're loving the Strange Academy, and a lot of people are specking on it. Next, we have Batman #92, the 1 in 25 Jorge Jimenez variant. This is the Punchline cover. Her first cover appearance was 92. Most people thought that was going to be her first, but then Hell Arisen became her first. Either way, this 1 in 25 was going for $45 to $50 after release. And basically, it's sitting right there. It's still going for $40 to $60, which is actually down. It got a little bit higher than this during the main part of the Joker War story. When she was appearing, people went after the book a little bit harder there for a while. 9.8s are running around $80 to $120, which is also down a little bit from where they kind of peaked around $150-ish. So still some interest in Punchline. It's been pretty steady for the most part, but not a huge interest in Punchline. Like, it hasn't really taken off. Next, we have G.I. Joe #212. This Fuso variant is a little bit hard to find, and so yeah, this one had multiple sales from the $70 to $100 range. Now raw copy runs you about $40 to $60. 9.8 will run you around $200. So again, it's dropped back down, but not a lot, and still doing pretty good. with that, we're going to move into Comic Buzz. And first up on our Comic Buzz list is is New Guardians #2. So this is back for the second week in a row. This is our first appearance of Snowflame. We won't go into his powers, but he had been a one-off character. Was supposed to appear back in Catwoman. And yeah, he did. Back then, last week when we talked about it, it was $25.30 for copies of this. Then it jumped all the way up to $35 to $50. And now it's a $10 to $15 book. This was definitely a trap. This is not a character that has much of a future given the nature of his powers. But there's a little bit of nostalgia. I don't even know if it's nostalgia. Just kind of fun that he's kind of an odd, weird character. Is why people still will pay even $10 to $15 for it. Next, we're going to move into Peter Parker Spider-Man #49. And this is the first appearance of Virus. The problem is this is not the same Virus that Donny Cates was about to introduce to Venom that people were chasing after and specking on this. Donny Cates was creating his own Virus character, and he even said so, but didn't stop people from chasing this for $20, and now it's a $5 book. So yeah, it was $20, $25 for raw copies, and now it's a $5 book. This was definitely a trap because it wasn't the character that Donny Cates was inventing his own character. This was not the character that people were getting. And yeah, Tom actually tried to warn people during his video, but didn't matter. People were still paying $20 to $25 for it. Next, we have Superman #14. And this is the recalled variant. And this is because it has a cameo of the Gold Lantern in it. If you had forgotten there was such a thing as a Gold Lantern, so did I. But this had the cameo of the character, and back then it was going for $15. 9.8 were 60 plus. Now it's still going 10 to 15, which I don't know if that has to do with the Gold Lantern or if that has to do with just that it's that recalled cover. Only two recent 9.8 slab sales, 75 and 150. So, but there's not just many slabs even out there listed, so that's part of it. So this one's been pretty steady. I don't know if it has anything to do with the Gold Lantern, as we'll see in just a second, but I think it has more to do with it just being an Air recalled comic. So yeah, next up we have Legions of Superheroes #6, and this is the first appearance of the Gold Lantern, or the first full appearance, I guess. And this was a hot character to spec on at his release, and yeah, people were paying $15, $20 week of release for this comic. Now it's a 5 to 15-ish comic. Generally, it's in that 5 to 10 plus shipping kind of range. 9.8s can be had for $30 to $40. So that tells you how much interest there really is. So yeah, this one's way down. Maybe something happens with the Gold Lantern at some point, but I would guess that's probably pretty far down the road. So a lot of time to snag this one at some point. Next, we're going to move into Batman Legends of the Dark Knight #120. And this is the first appearance of Cassandra Cain as Batgirl. So she first appeared in Batman 561. Actually, I have it on my background. I think it's right. Anyway, she then, but she became Batgirl in this issue. And this all hit the list because there were solicitations for Joker War, or Joker War Zone. So a one-shot during the Joker War, and she was on one of the covers, along with Spoiler and the new Clown Hunter character, in what appeared to be her Batgirl costume, which we hadn't seen her in for a while. So we didn't know if that was just a variant cover the way Chu wanted to draw it, or if it was actually meant something. It appears it was just a variant that Chu wanted to do. So, but back then this book was going for $20 raw. 9.8s were hitting $170. Still a $5 to $20 book raw, depending on condition. But 9.8s could be had for $50 to $100. So this is another one down. Still a good I'll be back, but just not worth anything at the moment compared to what it was when they thought maybe she was going back into the Batgirl costume. Next, we have Batman Beyond #1. And this hit the list because it was setting records. No particular specific spec, just people thinking maybe something would happen with Batman Beyond. Back then, raw copies were going for $200, 9.8s were pushing $900. This book has continued to climb, although it's actually back down a little bit from where it peaked at some point this summer. Because it was, well, we'll get into that in a second. Right now, raw copies are running $200 to $400. 9.8s are sitting around $1,500. They got as high as 1900 earlier in the fall. So this one is slowly dropped back a little bit, but still a ton of interest in this. And yeah, Batman Beyond is a popular character, kind of another nostalgia thing for people that remember that cartoon. We'll see if they ever do anything with him. I don't know, but yeah, people are definitely chasing this book. Next, we have Richard Dragon, Kung Fu Fighter #1. First Richard Dragon, first Bronze Tiger. And this basically had to do with the announcement that Bruce Timm was working on another animated movie for DC, and this one was going to explore Batman's origins, or his training, I guess, not his origins, but his training, how he got all his fighting skills, and supposedly Richard Dragon, Bronze Tiger, and Lady Shiva were all going to be a part of this. So that caused this book, even though it was an animated movie, to jump up to $45. 9.8 was hitting $300. And now it's a $10 to $30 book for a raw copy, depending on condition. Really high grade, it would cost you, like $25, $30. 9.8 for this are setting $300 to $400, but there's only been 4 sales of a 9.8 in the last 6 months. So there's just not a lot of copies slabbed out there, especially in super high grade. So another one that's down a little bit, but it definitely, and I'll be back. Next, we're going to move into MCU rumors, sort of, for the first one. This is Thor Annual #1, the first appearance of Hercules in Marvel Comics. And this had to do with rumors that Disney was releasing a Hercules live-action movie. The thing was that it was supposedly not the Marvel version of Hercules. It was going to be a live-action remake of the animated movie, which they've done a bunch of those live-action remakes. Lion King, Aladdin, Jungle Book. They've done a ton of those. So that's what it was actually supposed to be, but that didn't stop this book from hitting the list. Back then, so I feel like this has to be a mistake, but this is what, back then, Tom was saying average copies were going for $650. 9.0 sold for $1,800. But raw copies now are going like $50 to $100, depending on condition. Nowhere near, I didn't see any raw copies sale for anywhere near $650. I can imagine if it was a super high grade, but there was a very fine copy that went for under $100. So not sure if that was a mistake when they said $650 or if it's just dropped down a ton. There's been no 9.0 sales since the one that was the $1,800 sale that they were talking about. 7.0s are running at $500 to $600, which is basically the highest graded copy that's sold kind of here recently that I could kind of look at. So a great book overall, but does appear to be down somewhat from back in the summer when these rumors were going on. Next, we're going to move into Star Wars Age of Republic Special #1, the first first full appearance in canon, of Ahsoka. So we all know that Star Wars Clone Wars is her first appearance. Then her appearance in actual Marvel comic, that was a Dark Horse comic. Her appearance in actual Marvel comics is a little bit more confusing. So she's in a panel in a underwater suit where you just see her head and Darth Vader 14, and then she's in a panel where you see more of her in the background, kind of in Mace Windu 5, which appears to be the book that's jumping after the Star Wars announcements yesterday, where he's thinking about other Jedi and the Jedi Order or something, and you see a whole bunch of Jedi, and she's one of them, that's shown in the panel. But this is the one that she actually appears fully in. But this one has not jumped since the announcement of the Ahsoka show, so we'll see. But back then, people were moving toward it. It was going for $100 on average. Now it'll run you $50 to $100 for a raw copy. 9.8 went for $300, but there hasn't been many sales. Not many copies of this are slabbed yet. So the result is this is definitely down. I'll be back, and despite the announcement yesterday, not really started moving yet. We'll see if it does. So far, most of the movement appears to be on that Mace Windu 5, which is a little odd to me, but it's so messed up, and all of them come way after a whole bunch of Dark Horse appearances, so we'll see. Next, we have Spider-Man #1, the Eddie Granoff hip-hop variant, and really, These last three books are all about Miles Mania. This was the June, July were the heart of Miles Mania this year, when people were just going nuts for anything that was Miles Morales. And this hip-hop variant was definitely a book people were chasing. Back then, raw copies were going for 100. Now they're still going for 100 to 150. 9.8s are running at 350 to 400, which is up from this point where it hit the list. I believe the book went quite a bit higher, actually, at one point during the summer. So I think it's actually come down from the actual peak, but still up from this. Still a good value for this really cool hip-hop variant. Next, we have Spider-Man number 2, or Spider-Man 2 number 1. And this is the Turner Virgin variant that was supposedly limited to 1,000 from Aspen Comics. Raw copies of this were going for 100 plus back in the summer. Again, everybody was chasing Miles covers, Miles first appearances, Miles everything. They were buying it. And this was still also going for good value. $75 to $100 for a raw copy. 9.8 will still run you $300. So yeah, this was down from where it was back then, but still pretty close in value to what it was doing back then. And finally, we have Ultimate Fallout 4, the first appearance of Miles Morales. Back then, raw copies were, this book was also setting records. Raw copies were going for 300, at 9.8 broke 1,000. A newsstand, raw copy of the newsstand went for $1,000 itself. Now this book has also slid back a little bit. It's running $200 to $300 for raw copies, $900 to $1,000 for 9.8s. So this is a slight slide from this point. But the book went quite a bit higher during, and as we'll see in the coming weeks. So it's down a little bit. It was definitely kind of I'll be back. Still going for way more value than it was at the first of 2020. And overall, this book is definitely trending up. And all it would take is any rumor of a Miles coming to live action, and this book will go right back up even further again. So that's this week's list. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.